Five, four, three, two, one, go. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Shadow of the Cast. I am here with Villain Theory. How you doing, Villain?
Doing really good. Pretty excited for this, and we've got a couple of topics today, and I think both of them interest me at least equally.
Absolutely. I am pumped to talk about it. What are those topics, by the way, for
Oh,
our listeners?
well, the main topic, I suppose, is going to be how to know when a deck build is good, because you can play a deck and you can make a deck, and knowing it's good and really recognizing it is kind of a different thing. I think quite an interesting topic. The second one is a little game called Arkham Horror, which might be an LCG, might be made by the same company as Fantasy Flight Games, might also be going for the current legacy environment as Marvel Champions. We seem to be they seem to be getting the new stuff first, and what they've got is a new core set announced. So I think we're going to talk about that and maybe what that could mean for Marvel Champions. Could there be a Marvel Champions core set version 2 coming up?
I am so excited to wildly speculate with what's going on. I've been uh maybe some irresponsible speculation on the streams in the last week or so talking about it, but it is some pretty big news, and so I'm excited to digest some of that with you. But like you said, first we are going to be talking about decks in Marvel Champions. Specifically, how do you know when a deck build is good, or how do you iterate on a deck until you make it good? And I guess I just want to start out with the question, have you ever made a bad deck, Villain Theory?
Well, yeah.
Wait, what?
Yeah, no, definitely, especially some first attempts. Maybe it's a new hero and there's a new mechanic, and it doesn't use like a straight, like easily kind of linear kind of mechanic. There's something a bit more to it. There's something that's hard to quantify in exact numbers, especially like to grasp it first time. I would even say for Maria Hill when she came out, like, okay, I wouldn't say it was a bad deck, but I'd say my decks for her now are significantly more refined. I kind of have like everything down, and there's definitely characters that will catch you off guard, or even concepts which are maybe a bit ambitious, and you're trying to kind of push the envelope a bit. And sometimes it doesn't work, and you need to make the deck slightly more sensible, which is always sad. But it definitely does happen.
And when you make a bad deck like that, is it something that you then iterate on to try and make it better, or is it something that you scrap and like restart, thinking about the same hero, or is it a little bit like of depends on how bad the deck actually was?
Yeah, it depends if it was an absolute like horrible mess, or if which it isn't normally, but like, does it have potential? Did I just didn't get the kind of right things lining up? Was the cost like a bit too expensive, so I had awkward hands, or did the way the cards work together actually just not really achieve anything? Wasn't really fun. So I'd say it's kind of like 50-50. It really depends how it goes.
And I guess like maybe you don't have an answer. I have an answer. I just thought of it, but can you remember the worst deck that you have built?
Ooh, I remember the worst deck. My partner, which some people on who watch YouTube will now know as Villanette, she built
Oh,
a
that's a
deck
lovely.
called she built a deck called Bad Allies, and it was Adam Warlock with all the allies we never use, and she made me play that. But that was on purpose. Um, I don't know if I can remember one that like I really seriously tried to make it like absolutely terrible, never to be attempted again. There's probably one out there where like I didn't understand the rules interaction. This thing but there's a phenomenon where you should really read the cards in Marvel Champions. And maybe I didn't. I got into the game and I was like, wait, this doesn't work how it worked. That sounds familiar, but I've got no interesting examples. Let me hear yours.
Yeah, so the one that I built that didn't work out too well was a Venom Digging Deep ability. Or
Ah,
because the setup of him discarding cards until you get a weapon does not trigger during setup are the responses on Digging Deep and White Fox. And so that was a bit of a dud of a deck. I also a couple years ago, one I forgot who did it. Maybe it was Reddit, maybe it was a podcast or something. They did it like a Secret Santa gift exchange where the gifts were different decks that you would build. So you would submit a deck idea, I want to have this deck made, and then it would shuffle everybody up, and then you could make a deck for somebody else in the community. And my prompt was, I want you to make the worst deck possible, but with the requirements of still having cards in there that are playable. So you can't put
Right.
cards that, like, if you are not an X-Men, you cannot play this card type situation. I got a Valkyrie protection deck that was truly horrendous. It was a work of art. I need to see if I can go find that somewhere, but then I took all those cards and put them into Strange, and it worked fine. So
That says a lot.
yeah, right, right.
That,
Um,
that I want to say that initiative where like everyone makes decks for different people. That sounds like really cool. I'd love to see that come back or something.
well, I mean, like, we do have a podcast. We could do that. If we
I
wanted
mean,
to.
does someone have it, copyrighted? No, but I don't know. I wonder who organized it the first time. But if people want to, ask for decks in the comments, by all means.
And I mean, like, I'm down. I'm down to do that. I mean, we're coming up on the holiday season, so if we want to, maybe our next episode, we'll tease or announce the deck exchange for Shadow the Cast. So we'll figure that out.
Yeah,
So
that sounds
stay tuned,
awesome.
subscribe, hit that like button, all that good stuff. Make sure you're around. But we are kind of in a situation where I have been able to play some of the new heroes out of the Civil War box, and I believe it's still delayed over there in the UK.
Where is it? I think it's
No,
honestly like a month away. Is what I've roughly heard. So I'm sitting over here in the past, just happy I've got tricks to take over.
yeah. And so glad to hear that you finally do have Trickster take over. Sad to hear that you do not have Civil War, but I think it presents an interesting opportunity where I have been able to play a lot of Hulkling. I've played a couple of games with Tiger, but I've dived a lot deeper with Hulkling. And have you done any research or playtest or tabletop simulator plays with Hulkling at all?
No,
Beautiful.
no. I wait for the character. I will say when you say research, I have I make deep dives and stuff. I basically did my own personal deep dive into him. So I've got like a lot of things in mind, but I haven't actually tested anything.
Yep, yep, beautiful. This is the perfect situation then, because I think of Hulkling as being a fairly complex hero. He's got a lot of different play lines. He's got a lot of different triggers. What shapeshift do you want to be in? So I want to ask you, when you get this box, how are you going to go about building a good deck for Hulkling? Walk me through kind of conceptually your process.
I've got two things in mind for Hulkling specifically from having like looked at the preview and so on. Is there's a strategy where you play one of his shapeshift upgrades, like turn one, round one, and that's your stat line, and you basically just focus on that. You build around having that. You know you're going to be able to have that because of his alter ego ability, and you lean into it. The other one that really intrigues me is changing the shapeshift thing a lot, which I believe readies him with his hero ability. Going to like stat boost maybe, trying to make that work. I think I'm going to play it safe, pick one shapeshift upgrade I want to build around, and like aim for that because that just sounds safer and easier than randomly changing to different forms. But I'm not 100% sure. I normally play two-player first of all. Like we'll bust open the campaign box, customizable scenario box, whatever the heck this thing is called now, and me and Villanette will like play a character each. So I'm tempted to say she is definitely gonna want to be aggression Tigra. So I'm probably gonna maybe look for maybe like Justice Hulkling. Sounds like a good fit.
Nice. Yeah, Justice Hulkling is fun. So you're building a Justice Hulkling deck. Are you going to be hoping to stick in one of those shapes? Or are you going to be flipping around during that deck build?
Yeah. I'm thinking maybe I go winged because I believe his response there removes threat, and I'm slightly scared of the actual forwarding form, the +2 forwarding form, making the enemy scheme.
Yeah, it's Nick Fury all over again, right?
I do love
Um,
Nick Fury, I will say that, but I don't know how it's gonna go.
yep, yep. This brings us to one of our first questions that we got from Leroy Jenkins, kind of talking about maybe thinking about the Hulkling or any hero. But if you wanted to make a starting template for a deck build, what would it be? Basically, how many resources, resource generators, allies, or events would you put in there? And does that change based on the hero?
Yeah, for me, I would say it absolutely changes based on the hero. But as a general, like an average template, putting in strength, energy, and genius, I'm just slapping those in there. And the argument is why should I remove them, not why should I add them, if that makes sense. And that's the case for like every deck. And even if the rare decks that don't want them, they're probably still fine if they are in there. So it's a pretty safe bet. Resource generators, I think, is the other one, which I've said before, really early on, like before I even did YouTube, when I was did a couple videos with you when you invited me on. We talked about like cost curve, we talked about different things. I talked about resource generators, and I said I like to try and aim to have like 4 in the deck. And this can be the hero's own ones, so I'm adding in less if the hero already has a bunch. Though it can depend. Sometimes, I really like them. But what I like about resource generators over other like static boosts is you can spend them on whatever you need. It's not like I play this, my damage is boosted. But what if I need threat removal? If I have a lot of resource generators, I can potentially play any threat removal I find. There's some pros and cons to that, but I like the flexibility, and it's going into it without the expectation I'm going to try and play all 4 resource generators immediately as soon as they come up. It's giving me options, so I have probably like a better turn 1, find some better stuff early on in the game. Sometimes I'll have 4 in there, and I'll only play 2. Sometimes I'll have like 6 in there, and I'll play all of them. But those are the 2 main things which I'm really trying to make sure I have like something in there, because that's what I really enjoy.
Yeah. One of the things I have found with Hulkling is because all of his shapeshift upgrades have a double resource, he has 4 doubles already in his deck. He can use his supports to shuffle those back in. He has ways to recur them. And so I'm with you where it's like, why take them out? But I'm curious because I came to the conclusion that I'm not running a lot of not all the doubles all the time in Hulkling. Is that
Gotcha.
something that you have found with maybe like a Black Panther as well, who has multiple doubles? Is that something that you've done before? Remove
Um,
those energy shrink genius?
for Black Panther, I'd say definitely not. But what it becomes interesting is once you hit like 6 resources, I feel like each one you add in then becomes particularly dangerous, having like too many resources. Particularly if you play like high pressure stuff on expert, and suddenly there's a bad villain turn, and all you've got is like 4 resource cards, a 0 cost card, and a support that's completely irrelevant to the situation. And you're like, I wish I didn't have all of this money. Uh, but for the most part, like Black Panther, I'll always have strength, energy, and genius. The question then becomes, do I also take like 2 times power of aggression? When on another character with those cards I've got in the deck, I might absolutely take power of aggression. When I've played in pool on a character that has 2 or 3 of their own signature cards, because pool has 3 really good resource cards: self confidence, self control, and self preservation. I want to say. Then like it becomes a case of, do I really want 8 or 9 or 10 resource cards in this deck? And usually it's no. So then usually I might pull them out then, if that makes sense. Hulkling's a
Mhm.
really interesting one because I have heard people like speculate, do you think he's going to want to run all the resources or not? I don't know. I do know that his cost curve in general is pretty high. Like I feel like he's a lot of 2 cost cards, at least in the preview. So I feel like I'm still taking strength, energy, and genius, but I'm gonna have to see how it goes in gameplay. It might be less of a case I'm not taking so many resources, but more of a case I'm trying to make sure I'm not running a bunch of like really cheap cards that he's not going to be able to put the resources in the right place for.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I think the allies and events are probably a little bit more hero specific. So if I'm running Miss Marvel, I want more events. If I'm running Hulkling, I probably want more events. Or if I'm running like Cyclops, I'm leaning probably a lot more allies. And so that can be a little bit more nuanced. With that being said, we have another question from Adam Holt, who asks, does every deck need a certain number of allies? Specifically, like, should a solo player always include 4 to 6 allies in their?
Okay, I mean for me, this is kind of an interesting one because if you're asking me if you want to make like a really powerful deck, you probably are going to want a lot of allies. People who play heroic mode known to take a lot of allies. Allies just known to be a very efficient card type. I do have a video out there saying allies are the strongest card type, and I think it's pretty. In my, there's definitely exceptions in certain situations. Yeah, I'd prefer an event. Certain events are better than certain allies, but as a general, I'm definitely like allies are very good. So if you want to, if you're talking about power, probably, but you don't have to have allies to do well. You can be, I'm going to say, every scenario in the game, maybe not with every hero, but you can be every scenario in the game without a single ally added to your deck. It's totally possible. So every deck does not need a certain amount of allies to work. With that said, I think newer players and solo players will have an easier time, like with more allies. Like newer players especially, because an ally can attack, it can fort, it can block, you can kind of do anything you need. So in terms of gameplay or deck building, it's kind of a nice kind of does a little bit of everything. So if you're not sure what to add, just put in that extra ally. Not sure what to play that ally. And they're kind of they're just very good, but absolutely not necessary. I find myself trying to add as few allies as possible, with the understanding that I love allies, and I think that I really, I look at a deck and think this really needs allies. So I still often do bring, like, I don't know, 4 to 8, and leadership. Who knows how many I could be taking. But sometimes I try and keep it down because I feel like it'd be very easily, I could very easily get up to 10 or even 12 in some decks.
Yeah, yeah, and they are very powerful. One of my favorite pieces of advice or like deck building topics that we have discussed is when you were talking about the different card types being like events, allies, and then lumping together upgrades and supports, and kind of the pacing and when you want those to pay off, where events are immediate impact. And so you're going to see like deal 8 damage, remove 5 threat, things that happen in the moment and can solve immediate problems. The upgrades and supports are going to take a little bit longer because a lot of times you have to exhaust them. You get to use them once per turn, but they can be very powerful. And allies are that flex position where they are a little bit of long-term payoff, but also immediate effect. And it can also depend on the ally that you're playing. But that's what makes them so powerful. Flexibility, especially in true solo, is just so important to a successful deck build because you don't necessarily know what the villain's going to be throwing at you at any given time. And so if you have a flexible deck, which could include flexible card types like an ally, those are typically fairly powerful. And so I've always kind of thought about that, and that's kind of changed the way that I think about deck building, is having a balance across all 3 of those categories: the immediate impact, the longer term, as well as that flex position. And then expanding out that flex position is the easiest to kind of add more into, like the allies. It's easier to add more allies than it is upgrades and supports because you're able to push that longer term or have them have a more immediate impact. Maybe they're chump blocking or something like that. Yeah, allies are. It's. I don't know. Okay, can you have too many allies? I guess I was going to speculate on it, but I want to ask the expert.
You make a lot of good decks as well, I will say. But this was a lot of talk a few years ago, definitely. Maybe a year or two after Adam came out, Adam Warlock, and people were just taking all the 0, 1, 2 cost, whatever allies we had, on Adam, and just filling up his deck to, like, I don't know, 40 cards, 50 cards, just Adam, all allies. And those decks did completely fine. It's always more efficient, well, often more efficient, if you use the last hit point on an ally to block, but a chump blocking, take an attack, that's very efficient. But allies can still be pretty good value if you use that last hit point to attack or thwart, some more than others. So you can get in a situation where if you just really want to bring a lot of allies, just keep attacking, keep thwarting, don't worry if it's the last hit point, keep the chain going. Oh, I drew 5 allies. Well, you can probably spend 3 of them on the other 2, and ally limit is free. As long as you keep using them, you can probably keep rotating a lot of them. I don't recommend it necessarily, like, overall, but if you want to go for like a fun challenge, I think it can actually do quite well. So the answer is almost no, but it might depend a bit on the allies, because if you have a bunch of like 4 cost really expensive allies, someone like Karma I really like, but she captures a minion, turns it into an ally, so she kind of takes up 2 ally slots. You can have too many of the wrong allies, but not too many of the right allies, I guess is what I'm going with. So, don't worry too much if you really want to take a lot of them, but there is some nuance there, because you can absolutely run into situations where you have to like overwrite them. I don't know if people know this. A lot of people do know this. But if you're at your ally limit, you're still allowed to play an ally, but you must immediately remove one of them. So you don't want to do that too often. So when done right, you can't have too many allies, but there are definitely times where you can. I feel like I'm repeating myself. Hopefully that made sense.
Well, I mean, it's important, right? Like, allies are good. That's, I think, the key takeaway here. But I want to go back to the Hulkling Justice deck that you're building once you get Civil War in your hands. We've talked about resources, generators, allies, and events. So if you sit down and you have this first iteration of a Justice Hulkling deck, what key indicators are you looking for to understand if it is a good deck?
Well, this is a very interesting topic, and with your permission, I might just maybe villainously, monologue for a little bit here. But as soon as I think the idea for this topic was for you here, and as soon as you mentioned this topic, I was like, no, how do I know when a deck is good? What am I looking for? And it can depend on the deck. Is the honest thing. Let's say you challenged me to beat Ronan first try of this horrible modular set. I'm probably basing on if it did well purely based on performance. But a lot of the time, I'm aiming for fun. Was a deck fun? Some decks turn out to be a bit fiddly or not very impactful, and you're like, oh, it wasn't that fun. So there's different kind of criteria I'm looking for to judge whether it's good. But I think most of the time we're talking about performing well and maybe whatever idea you had for the deck actually working. Because sometimes you can win a game convincingly, but the whole combo you were built around actually didn't come together, and just the rest of the cards kind of just powered through. So I think for me, if I've got like an idea in mind for the deck, I want to see it come together. I don't want like awkward turns or anything. And ideally it's going to perform well. Ideally we're going to get that win, hopefully. But a win against, I don't know, standard risky business is very different to expert Ronan. So there's definitely levels, and for me, I'm probably thinking more of like general expert villains, kind of an ambiguous one, because I don't want to build every deck to fight expert Ronan. So I feel like it forces out a few fun options, and it's too high stress,
Yep.
But for somebody else, it might be very different, which I think is important to keep in mind.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about this topic because I feel like knowing when a deck is good is not something that I've ever been able to put into words. I just know, or I know it's not good, and I'm curious if we are able to come to a conclusion or like be able to express that like feeling of, oh, that worked, or that didn't work, because kind of what I just heard you say is that you can still win and the deck may not be good.
Yeah, that's what I would say, honestly. But again, it depends what you're looking for. If you're really focused on the win and get the win, you might consider that it's good enough for you. I wonder if it's, when you play for a game of Marvel Champions or anything really, if you have several bad moments, you're going to get to the end of the game. If they were caused by something in your deck, talking about decks here, you probably know it's not a good deck. If you had several really feel-good moments and the deck you still won, that's probably a good indicator about it, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And then also on the flip side, you can have a lot of feel-good moments and the deck still be bad. I think back to it was my Spider Ham Taunt deck where I felt like I was just stuck in the mud spinning wheels. It was a lot of fun. I was drawing like 100 extra cards, but I never did anything. And so there is, I think, a harder to get to other side of the spectrum where it's like I feel awesome. I feel like I'm doing a lot, and then it's like I think I've hit the villain for like 3 damage. I've drawn 20 extra cards this turn, but like what am I doing? And so it gets to be kind of this balance where it's it's a Goldilocks zone where you have to do enough but also be progressed. But if you work too hard and spend too much energy on trying to carry out the combo, maybe it's not actually going to be an effective deck, especially against some of the more challenging villains.
Yeah, I do really like Taunt Spider Ham, although the harder the villains are, the kind of worse Taunt tends to be, which is a whole thing. A lot of the time we talk about cards, we've got like a static value assigned to them, even like status cards like Toughs and Stuns. But depending on what the villain does, what you're challenged with, definitely like changes all the values up. Just a whole different thing. To me, what you described sounds almost like a solo problem. Were you like? I assume you were handling the threatened things, but Spider Ham, not the highest damage character, you probably just didn't have a lot of damage cards to actually spend your stuff on. But in multiplayer, you might have been like really good at handling the threat, but maybe someone else could have handled the damage, and it might have felt better there. I don't know. I didn't see you play the deck, but that's just something I was thinking about.
Yeah, it was the first time I think I've ever been streaming where chat was like, "Okay, let's go. Like, let's do something." Because I was just like, I play Taunt, I wiggle room, I draw 4 cards. I play Taunt, it was just like this, like, and it was fun. I think like it could have absolutely been modified to put some more damage in there and actually iterate on something. But maybe that is kind of the key, because you iterate on a deck until it feels good. And maybe that's it. As you're playing, you start to see the shortcomings of the deck that you're playing. With Spider Ham, that was I didn't have damage. I've played a lot of decks, probably Spider-Man, where it's like, oh shoot, I had my damage because I was swinging web kicks, and my defense because it's Spider-Man and black flips and 3 defense and all of that. but I thwart it out really easily. And I think, again, this probably is a little bit more of a solo problem where you have to kind of handle all aspects or angles, let's call it angles instead of aspects of the game, where you have to do a lot of everything. And as you are going through, maybe it's, what am I losing to? Am I always losing to a threat? So at that point, maybe the deck is not, quote, good. It could be very fun. It could be effective in like maybe a higher player count game, but if you're looking at true solo, that may be where you need to shore up and start adding allies or events that help with that threat mitigation. So if you are iterating on the deck, are you trying to solve a specific problem that you see that the deck was not able to solve before? Or how does that process work?
Yeah, I like the way you talked about all of that. I think the way I try and do it, whenever I deck build in general, whether I'm iterating on its first time, every time I add a card to the deck, there has to be a purpose behind it. It's not just like, oh, here's like 25 good cards. I hope this works. And, a lot of the time it might, particularly if they're allies, because they can do whatever. So, they'll kind of be flexible where you need them to be. If I'm playing Spider Ham in solo, I have damage in my head as a weakness of his that I need to try and fill in. So I'm trying to make sure that's there. If it's 2-player, I usually make both of the decks when we play here. So I'm kind of trying. I've said this before about trying to build like basically one cohesive deck out of 2 decks, if that makes sense. So I'll be making sure I want between the decks them to be able to handle everything. If I don't have Justice between them, I might hope they've both got enough threat removal. If one's Justice, I might not worry about the threat removal so much on the other deck. But I've definitely got these things in mind that I want to add, cards in for to cover that purpose. Sometimes that purpose just make your hero better at what they already are at. Sometimes it's make a certain card they have consistent. Sometimes it's cover a weakness. And if you're iterating on a deck, I think those are the kind of things you should be asking. One of the ways you can kind of like play a deck, win, and maybe the deck wasn't so good. Maybe you built the deck wanting to use this kind of weird card you don't normally use, and every time it's in your hand, you just spend it on something else. So like, oh, I played a deck with this card, but you didn't really use the card, and that'd be something where I think you have to make the hard decision to remove the other things that you used instead, or remove that card, which is probably what you should do, and just take something you want to play.
And I will say that I think not all decks need to be perfectly optimized. I think that there is room in this cooperative game to have less optimized decks that utilize some of those lesser loved cards. And it brings me to another question by MD Phantom Flip, which is fun. 2-part question for you guys. We're going to answer the second part towards the end because it's about the new Marvel Champions Core hypothetical set. But how do you make a card deemed, quote, unplayable work? So are there cards out there that you have specifically built around because you have not used them before?
Who's deeming these cards unplayable? That's what I want to know. Who's doing it? No, I don't think any card is unplayable, but some are such low value you wouldn't play them unless you don't really have another option or you're like making yourself. So I guess that's what we're talking about here. I definitely have decks where I've done that. I don't know if I've got any examples off the top of my head. They will come to me and I will say them as they do. And I'm gonna, this is maybe a bit taboo. This is gonna break a lot of maybe common opinion or popular opinion, at least in some vocal minorities, I don't know. But basically, I would say some Marvel Champions players, and most people probably somewhere in the middle, and that's probably normal. But some are very much like, I'm going to use all the weird stuff. I don't want to use the good stuff. Everyone is using the good stuff. Or too many decks using the good stuff. I don't want to use that. And let me tell you guys, the good stuff is fun. You probably should just, use it. But you don't want to overuse it, which I do understand. But the thing is, the way to make weird cards that are not maybe so powerful or a little bit hard to play sometimes work, I think is actually by combining them with more powerful cards. For example, if there's a weird janky combo that's not very strong, like, you need to go through all these hoops to make this card pay off enough to be worth playing, well, play Nick Fury, draw 3 more cards, and that'll totally boost the consistency, right? And if you've got like a few allies out, because some people are like, oh, I don't like allies, they're too strong. I love allies, just play your allies, do it proudly. But some people really don't like decks with many allies, and they'll put like a hard cap of 3, 4, 5. People will be like, oh, a deck with no allies, I love this. Well, I would just say that if you play allies that can cover you in different situations, it just gives you more freedom, makes more space to play that weird thing or that less good thing. and get to enjoy that. So that's my secret advice. Play the playable stuff to play the unplayable stuff.
I like it. Do you have more fun deck building for power, or do you have more fun deck building around some of these cards that are less playable? Let's not call them unplayable, but less playable, to try and make it work and get that
Hmm.
gimmicky thing to go off.
I think when I'm deck building, I'm gonna go into like a bit of a behind the scenes topic here. On my like Patreon and stuff, you can like request like a deck build from me, and I have a little form, and people can fill in if they want a deck build for power, for fun, or a balanced mixture of the two. And I think every single one I've got has been a mixture of the two, except maybe one that was for power. They've all liked a mixture of the two, and I feel like I'm going for a mixture of the two when I build myself most of the time. Unless I've like set up a really crazy challenge and I'm like focusing on power. But I don't think power is the main thing I'm looking for. I think there's like a minimum power where I'm happy with the deck, where I don't feel like I'm like struggling, or the other person, because I can play two players right now, having like carry me, and I feel like I'm a burden to the team. Um, so I feel like there's maybe a minimum of power I'm aiming for, but then I'm really focused on trying to get the deck to run in the way that I want it to. So I don't know that I go out of my way to play really like the less popular cards. But if someone asks me, do you want to do this challenge where you build the most powerful deck possible? Would you might try and make this card work? Maybe a bit like your deck factory kind of stuff you do on your channel. I would choose the deck factory kind of stuff.
Yeah, I'm on team. Let's make the weird card work. I don't know. I like you can go power. I have a lot of fun going power, but it's like, ooh, how do we make serve and protect work? Like and it creates, I think, a lot of creativity when it comes to deck building. When you do look at some of the less powerful or maybe less optimized, less straightforward. I don't even know what the right term is here because there are some cards out there that do not get played a lot that can be very impactful for the game. It's just kind of hard to set up. And I just have a lot of fun trying to figure out those combos. And like you mentioned, the deck factory is kind of that, where we pick a card, doesn't get played as much as some of our other, make the calls Marias, and build a deck that features that at its core. And I feel like that has been a really fun way to approach deck building. And it helps me be a little bit more creative and gets me out of the let's play Make the Call on Maria 12 times strategy, which is very good. It's very, very good. And in fourth player, I find that very fun.
Yeah, I think something I've seen from observing your streams as well is it's not necessarily an unplayable card that you like, but a card that maybe isn't best for this hero, but you'll try and make it work, and that's really fun. Like you'll have an idea and you'll really like to push it and see if that happens. So I am a big fan of that, and I think that's really cool.
It's goes back to the Johnny, Timmy, Spike, or whatever the Magic the Gathering play styles are. Where do you want to play for power? Are you trying to make, cool combos work? Or do you want to do like play the big cards, the big like monsters? I think in Magic, and so people just approach the game differently, and it's
Hmm.
it's cool that you can approach the game differently. I have a couple of questions that I feel like are similar in the sense of like more mechanics on the side of deck building, not necessarily card types. But let's start out with Metal Banshee, which is sick. I would definitely listen to that band. uh, they are saying that Marvel CDB gives us a good breakdown of the cost curve as well as resource type distribution in your decks. How important are these factors when you are building a quote good deck?
I would say if you're a new player, it's not the most important thing in the world, but you will notice if there's a problem during gameplay, and you can kind of learn to identify it. One example I've typically say is if I'm running like the Power of Aggression resource cards, I like there to be like 10 targets for it. Now, sometimes I'm fine if there's like 6 or 7. It's not like there has to be 10. But I've got like an idea in mind that I'm aiming for to make it most consistent. It's sometimes hard to see these work on like a chart or a graph or whatever. But on Marvel CDB, if I have like a bunch of double resources and I look at my deck distribution, and I've got tons of 0 and 1 cost cards, which does happen. I sometimes run into this. That is an issue. So that does become important. I think a character that you can see this on is like 4, who with limitless stamina, get over here. There's cards like this that you can like to take on him. But if you put in like free doubles and a couple of power off cards, maybe a couple of other power off cards, sometimes, especially for 4 hand size, you can run into issues, and I might rather have had a few 2-cost cards. So it does come into effect, and I think I talked a little bit earlier. We talked about, am I adding strength, genius, and energy to Hulkling? Haven't played him, not going to commit to anything, but I think I'm planning to start with. But certain characters like Black Panther, if I'm in pool, again, I don't want to take the triple resources, the normal strength, energy, and genius, and his triple vibranium all the time. So there's definitely, I feel like there isn't, I don't have like an easy answer for like when you should do this and when you shouldn't, but I do think they are like moderately important, and when things go really wrong, very important.
Yep. Yep. I would say I look at the cost curve more than the resource type distribution when I'm looking at CDBs.
I almost thought, I took that in my head as resource card like quantity, and that's why I started talking about that. I very rarely look at the resource type distribution unless a card like in the deck calls for it.
Hmm.
Sorry.
No, no, you're totally good. Card that calls for it being like a what doesn't kill me that requires a physical type resource. Yeah, that's where I'm going. The probably the most often that I'm looking at it is a home technique build where it basically gives a resource requirement to every red card that you're playing and not just like 3 copies of what doesn't kill me that's in the deck or even the odds with the lightning. But now you want to be playing all of your red attack events with a mental resource. And so sometimes I look at the distribution there, or if I have access to like a Quentin carrier or an X-Jet that can generate a wild resource to fulfill that requirement, that can also modify that a little bit. But I think to answer Metal Banshee's question, I'm very rarely looking at the resource type distribution. I'm trying to think of when it would show up the most. Potentially maybe like Hulk when I really want a lot of physical resources, or Captain Marvel when I'm really looking for energy, but I'm stretching here.
Yeah, I mean, Captain Marvel, I don't think you even need to lean into the energies, really. Hulk, you definitely do like some physicals. Wonder Man is gonna like some energy events, but it's like
Yeah.
it's kind of really hero specific stuff, not general. I will say in solo play, if you're the only one who can remove attachments, having at least a couple of every resource type can be useful, because a really physical focused Hulk deck doesn't remove a lot of attachments that want mental resources. I'll put it that way. Um, but yeah, in general, I don't think it's too big of a deal. If you're in multiplayer, absolutely not really a focus for me at all. Um, yeah, I mean, wilds are nice. I will say, like, if you have a few wilds in there, sometimes you do notice it to be flexible, but like, it's really not a big deal unless a card demands it. And even then, I've got a Shuri deck about repurpose that I posted, and I had a couple comments about Moon Girl, and people are like, "Do you have enough mental resources there for Moon Girl?" That's a card where I think she's so good, even if you only have one mental. And worst case, it's just one card that you can spend on something else if you don't play at that deck pass. But usually it works out.
Yeah. Moon Girl is so good.
Yeah, it's worth the
Um,
risk.
yeah, exactly, exactly. The cost curve, on the other hand, we did a video many moons ago
Mm.
about the cost curve, specifically about the cost curve, and I'll link that below. But we went through that pretty in depth. Like it was a 40-minute video or however long it was just on the cost curve. And I believe before that video, I did not think about the cost curve whatsoever, and post that I have. And I think the biggest takeaway that Too Long Didn't Watch takeaway from that video is that most of the time, general rule of thumb is you want a flat line when it comes to a cost curve. When you're looking at the number of cards at a specific cost, so the number of cards being your y-axis and the specific cost being your x-axis, you want to try and get that to be a horizontal line because it then gives you that flexibility of the higher impact cards, which are going to cost more, versus the lower, let's take care of a immediate threat, play a lot of cards to handle a wide variety of threats. And I'm using threat here probably as not the best vocabulary, but you know what I mean.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
and obviously, there's nuances to that. There's times where that's not the case, but that's the rule of thumb. Horizontal cost curve is a flexible deck, which is typically good, especially in that true solo setting.
yeah. And I think a big warning sign is if you have more 3 and 4 costs than anything else, typically you're going to run into hands of cards. But sometimes you'll be able to play one card and not a single other card if you don't have resource generators out and stuff, which is awkward. So, not too many expensive stuff. Not to say don't take any, because some of them are the most fun cards in the game, but don't overdo it would be a general piece of advice.
Yeah, absolutely. The other question that we got about kind of the mechanics of deck building comes from Michael Tassiner. I believe I am saying that incorrectly, so I apologize. I'm just assuming. Oh, sorry, random side tangent. I did a MCDC recap stream on Step Into the Portal, and it was I don't actually remember who said it, but I learned on that stream, which was post MCDC, that the card shop that we were at was Huzzah Hobbies, not Hurrah Hobbies, which is what I've been calling it for the last month. But someone was like, it wouldn't be, a Nelson stream if there wasn't a mispronunciation somewhere in there. And so I take that to heart. But anyways, Michael asked, I hear many people talking about staying right at the 40 card minimum when deck building. How big of a factor is that for you when building decks for heroes? And I think this is at least historically been a fairly hot topic conversation in the community. Do you stick to 40? Are you ever going to go over? God forbid you do 50?
I think we've talked about this before here and there. And for me, it's hero specific and sometimes deck specific. Let's take a character like Iron Man. My character is useless until I can get down into hero form and have like a functional hand size, which means I need to play tech. I am very, 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 very rarely, to almost the point of never, going over 40 cards with Iron Man, so I can get that tech most consistently early on, so I can actually play the game. There's some other characters where, there's a lot of characters where I think it's very easy to go over 40, but I think when we're talking, I guess I want to quickly just say what you said. Not every deck has to be optimized, but it really hurts some characters to go over more than others. So anyone like particularly upgrade heavy or has one really key upgrade which changes the game, like Ant-Man's helmet might be one. Drax with his DWI, his mastery card, the card
mastery,
draw,
yeah,
whatever it is. Big card draw card. I want to get that as soon as possible, and getting it one turn later can be kind of a big deal. It depends, but like when you're Pushing Expert and some of these things of pressure, if I had a bunch of card draw one turn before, that is actually pretty impactful. And I would say turn one is the most important turn of the game. If you have a good turn one where you set up a couple of good upgrades and things kind of work, it will help you keep ahead of the villain's pressure and help you kind of snowball almost to victory in some ways. Going up to 41, 42 cards, don't need to worry about it. And actually, a lot of the time when I'm iterating a deck, I will do that. I'll have a couple of extra cards in and I'll just be like, I'll cut one of these next time. But in general, I am often aiming for 40, but I'm not going to stress it if I'm at 41, 42 sometimes. If I was publishing, maybe I would, but a lot of the time, like, we're ready to play. I'm just kind of finishing off some decks. And I'm like, 42 is all right. It's not a big deal. So, mixed things here. Certain characters, Quicksilver's another one. I really want friction resistance. I really want his stats to not be a 1. I don't go over 40. I don't go over 40 at all. But a character like Star-Lord or Phoenix, where a lot of the time, unless you're rushing with Star-Lord, but a lot of the time, their signature events aren't that desirable. Maybe like until Phoenix changes form or Star-Lord's ready to end the villain. Sometimes I go up to like 44, 45 cards on purpose. I've done 50 card decks on characters before. Adam Warlock's events get better if you go higher, play a high deck count with him. Yeah, so I think it's a mixture. And just if there's a really key summit you're looking for, don't dilute your deck would be my general advice, but don't stress about it too much.
Yeah, I have gotten less and less concerned with 40. I typically look to not shoot over 44-ish, 45, just as like I have no idea why. That's just kind of the number that feels good in my head. At a very let's not think about precise math here for a second, but I think of 40 cards being 8 hands of deck pass. If you're looking at 5 cards a hand, you have 8 hands per deck pass. So if you have 45, you have 9 hands per deck pass. So are you okay going one more turn without getting that key upgrade event or that one thing that you really need? A lot of the times, yeah, that's probably fine. But in the case of like D3, friction resistance or something like that, it's like, no, you need that. And now those lines get blurred a lot because there's card draw, there's alter ego, there's a lot of stuff. But that's kind of how I look at it. Whereas like I think there's a theoretical benefit to being at 40 cards. However, I'm not 100% sure how practical that benefit is when you're talking about 40 versus 42 cards.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I do think I'm a bit stricter on it than you. I think like 8 or 9 of my decks out of 10 are still going to be at 40 cards. But previously, I would never have gone like 41, 42. I think certain like elements and just maybe opinions in the community have also helped that, because I feel like maybe I used to feel some pressure to have to stay at 40, and I don't think you should. If anyone feels like that out there, just go to 42, go to 44, just like Nelson, and he's doing okay.
I've won a game before.
What?
I know, it just happened. It was pretty exciting.
No, but yeah, like you can be completely and utterly fine, and I feel like a lot of the discussion on this topic comes from previous years, and I feel like a lot of people's opinions is very stuck in maybe stone. And what we have these days, if you own a full collection of Marvel Champions, one of every product ever printed, the average aspect card power may be a little bit higher. Maybe the average aspect card that you're adding to your deck powers a little bit higher, because previous wisdom is that your 15 hero-specific signature cards are more powerful than aspect cards. But there are plenty of aspect cards which challenge or sometimes exceed the power of hero cards these days. So sometimes I'm like looking at this deck, I'm at like 40 cards, and I'm thinking there's 2 more cards I want to add. And I look at my hero cards and I think these might just be better than those. And like, what would I remove that's like worse? And actually, sometimes you can go over it without losing too much. The biggest thing I think is maybe it would take a turn longer to get that really good upgrade. But generally, the deck will work just fine. And you might just turn 1, opening hand, find that upgrade anyway. So, it can be completely fine.
And then you're off to the races. I think also a lot of that comes from lessons that have been learned in like a competitive TCG forum, where efficiency is the absolute end all be all in that competitive scene, whereas we're in a cooperative game, and so if it's not uber efficient, that's fine for a lot of people. I'm okay not being uber efficient in this game. And I also think that that is amplified and especially true in games with like Lord of the Rings or Magic the Gathering or even like Star Wars Lorcana, where you are not drawing 5, 6 new cards every turn. You're drawing 1, maybe 2 cards based on the system, where you're not going to see your entire deck every game. And so you have to minimize the deck size so that you are actually seeing the cards. Whereas in a game of Marvel Champions, in 90% of the games you play, you're going to see every single card in that deck at some point during the game. And so I think at that point, the strict deck minimum is a little bit less of a requirement than something where Lord of the Rings, if you deck out in Lord of the Rings, you intended to do so.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. One of the nice things about Marvel Champions is, come what may, you're probably going to see your entire deck pass unless you lose really early. Whereas something like Arkham, which I think me and you both also play, sometimes you do get through your deck, sometimes you don't. Certain characters will more than others, but I would say most of my games, I don't get through my deck a single time in Arkham, which that doesn't have a flexible deck building size. It's really interesting in Marvel Champions that you can go between 40 and 50. I feel like most games are either unlimited or exactly this amount, at least in my experience. But I kind of like how Marvel Champions is flexible. That's a really kind of like fun, underrated aspect of the game, I feel like. Aspect, really a nice word to use, but not for Marvel Champions because
Yeah, right.
yeah. So yeah, no, I think I agree with basically everything you're saying there. I feel like it kind of is an interesting like side bit here. Deck building for Arkham, I kind of feel like it's quite a lot harder because you don't have like that signature card building that foundation.
Mm-hmm.
It's not 15 cards kind of like making sure you've got a bit of everything. Because you are stuck to a certain deck size and you won't see your whole deck, really forces you to make everything really efficient. Which does, I think deck building for Arkham has improved my Marvel Champions deck building. But at the same time, I 100% agree. Everything has to be super optimized. Marvel Champions, you are going to see every card at some point. So take it easy.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to finish off this section of the podcast before we get into our irresponsible wild speculation with a question from Gorismo, who asked, which heroes do you find hardest to build decks for?
Ooh, this one might surprise people because I feel like the go-to answer, and actually, do you have a hero in mind for this?
No.
I feel like everyone's go-to answer for this is Adam Warlock because the deck building is so weird. However, I think I have the most trouble with Iceman and Nightcrawler because
Hmm.
I like to I don't necessarily want to like optimize the super power out of everything, but there's like 65 heroes or something in the game now. If I play the character, I want it to work. I want to have fun. I want it to like not take maybe 2 or 3 attempts to actually have fun with this character. Um, and what I find with Nightcrawler and Iceman, I find they can be a little bit clunky or unreliable. And I feel like making them reliable, either the deck ends up a bit samey, like I've done before, or it ends up more unique but unreliable. And that's kind of something I struggle with slightly. I still will have fun with them. I still think I do pretty well with them, but I feel quite frustrated when designing decks for those two characters specifically, which is interesting because they both kind of like put upgrades out. I need upgrades in the right place, and I think that's what does it. Trying to make sure I have the tools to get the upgrades in the right place, but then be able to put something else kind of unique in there really bothers me.
Yeah, I think Adam Warlock is a really good shout. I think he's just different and weird,
Mm.
which does make it less familiar, which can increase the complexity of building for that hero. You'd be proud of me though. I built a Adam Warlock deck, and I really enjoyed my Adam Warlock deck. I brought the MCDC. Yeah, it was
Yes.
ultimate support deck. Bring everything to
Oh,
pass out.
I saw that on Marvel CDB. It looked awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And then like I iterated on it with some advice from people there. But resource reserve with him, man, you throw those pool triples and just let other people there's so much it's so much fun.
That sounds
Um
great.
yeah, and I feel like when I'm building a warlock deck, it my answer is Warlock. I'm just going to go ahead and lock it in. My answer is Warlock. Thank you for giving that to me. But yeah, because I feel like Warlock doesn't necessarily have a direction that his kit points him towards. Every other hero in the I think every other hero in the game kind of has some sort of concept that they're going for. Ironheart wants progress counters. That's what she wants to do. She wants to level up to 3 and then blast the enemy away with her hands, like, or hand beams or whatever they are. Hulk wants to smash things, and because you have those 15 hero specific cards, that can very or that's a really good way to kind of point you in a direction of like, hey, this is kind of what this character wants to do. Iterate on that. And I feel like Warlock, he has a little bit of that, but it's way more flexible where it's like, hey, do what you want. And that can be very intimidating to build for. So yeah, I like the Warlock answer.
Yeah, I feel like building with only one card available, like you only take one of each card, is such a like a different beast, and it's not only like affecting consistency, but you got to look elsewhere to fill in the holes that maybe that second or third card would also like do that role. And I also think Adam can be a little bit the devil on your shoulder in a way because you can take all like the best upgrades from this aspect and this aspect, but he's a very slow tempo character in my opinion. He starts with like 1/4, one attack, no extra card draw on turn one, doesn't start with anything in play on turn one. He wants to get a few upgrades in play to really get his engine online. So if you take all these like things from different aspects, you can build basically a really slow game plan on top of a slow character, and all these cards individually are great, but in Marvel Champions, if you're under pressure, you know, there's a reason decks aren't just all like 20 upgrades and supports all the time. You need faster options. So I feel like that's a bit of an Adam Warlock trap. Again, one of his biggest strengths, healing with Soul World, but that's kind of a slower thing, right? You have to deck out and then you heal. It's not pushing the win condition or controlling the board. Even though there are great ways he can do it, he is a very fun hero that can do some very powerful stuff. I really like him, and I think I have got an unfair advantage with him. I started playing the game in Galaxy's Most Wanted. First expansion I ever experienced at release was Mad Titan's Shadow, and my friend really wanted to play Spectrum, so I ended up playing Adam Warlock like 6 times in a row. I started to get more involved with the Marvel Champions community around then, and I didn't have a lot of problems. I saw people talking about Adam Warlock. I just played them my way, and I kind of just made it work. And I kind of always had a, you know, he's probably the character I first really had to try and deck build for and figure out, as they came out. And I kind of like, I guess I got used to it more than some people. Not that like all my Adam Warlock decks are the best decks, but I think I have less difficulty than the average player. Put it that way. Uh, but I don't blame people for him being the most difficult. I think I'm going on a big tangent here, but I'm just gonna end it by saying I don't necessarily think Adam is hard to build for in and of himself, but you have a whole different learning curve and way to have to learn how to build to then build for him, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah, he's just so different than all the other rules that we have just learned and discussed when it comes to deck building. And you're like,
Yes.
nice. Also, random before we start, I have a hard time with Bishop. I don't know why. Yeah, Bishop's like, I just keep putting more resources in. I never have enough, or I have way too many. I cannot find that balance. I think that's a me problem, not a community problem, though.
I could talk about Bishop for a bit here, but I mean, I feel like 9 to 11 is a pretty like safe area where you'll have like enough to do some stuff, but it won't overflow. There's tools you can put around it, like card draw or more resource things that you can
Mm,
go higher. There's a whole kind of like discussion there, but maybe for next time.
yeah. Next time, which could be completely different because we may have a whole new iteration of the game. Speaking of Arkham Horror Marvel Champions new core set. Now, I do want to clarify. I got a couple questions from chat and Discord. We don't At the time of recording, we don't know that there's going to be a Marvel Champions 2.0. We are just assuming that there is based on the Arkham. What's up?
What I can tell you guys is that I did a poll on my Discord server. Will Marvel Champions have a new core set announced within 6 months? And 52% voted yes and 48% voted no. So the community is very divided, it seems, at least my Discord is, over whether there will be a new one. But I personally, I'm on team. I think there will be.
I think there will be too, and I find it funny that I posted a very similar question and I got 82% yes and 18% no.
I think you have a much more positive community than me.
That's fair. That's fair. But Fantasy Flight Games put out an article and a live stream announcing that there is going to be an Arkham Horror new core set. I've just been calling it Arkham Horror Core Set 2.0. I have no idea if that's actually what they're calling it. Um, it probably is important to know what they are calling it. Do we know?
I feel like they're just calling it the Arkham Horror Core Set, and that's kind of how they're going to advertise it.
They're calling it Chapter 2.
Yeah, Chapter 2 is like the big tagline. Is it on the box?
It's a good question.
I can see the box here. I'm going. Internet is happening. It just says Arkham Horror, the card game, a card game of arcane mystery and supernatural terror for 1 to 4 players. So on the front, they are not saying anything different. In fact, yeah, there is nothing about Chapter 2 in the name of the product that I can see.
Yeah. Which I do think would cause confusion if they did put that on the box. But they
Yeah.
announced the fact that we're getting a new core set for Arkham Horror. And our speculation for a new set of champions is rooted in a live stream that happened, let's call it months ago at this point, where they talked about both Arkham Horror and Marvel Champions at the same time, entering this new current and legacy environment where they're going to have a rotation, where they're going to be rotating products out that are no longer going to be legal, whatever that means in a cooperative game. We'll let you figure that one out. But during that conversation, they talked about these two games following a very similar pattern. And so, with that knowledge from that live stream that happened a couple months ago and the announcement of an Arkham Horror new core set, we have kind of jumped to the conclusion. I think it's a fair jump to say that we're probably looking at a Marvel Champions core set coming out. Is that fair?
Yeah, I wanna throw something into the mix here
I love
as
it.
well.
Let's do it.
When they did the live stream where they announced the current and legacy environments, and it was Tony, the head of the studio, I think, and the Arkham guy. Sorry to the Arkham guy, I don't know your name. I'm not involved enough.
I think it's Lovecraft.
Yeah. Arguably, we should hope they're not involved, but that's a different topic.
Yes.
No. There was a mention of the core set staying in like the current environment. And I think they kind of stumbled over it. There's a bit of like panic about what to say and what not to say. I think that is kind of an indicator that there's something going on behind the scenes with them. And yeah, I think if it's happening for one of the games and they're following the same kind of structure, new kind of approach, it just makes sense. And I also think it makes sense because they talked about in that live stream, if a card's too powerful, they might leave it behind. But you know what? All the most powerful cards, well, not all the most powerful cards, but you know where Nick Fury, Maria Hill, and Make the Call can be found? It's the core set. And it's, I think I've done it like against Expert Magneto. We talked about that on the podcast actually. Web Warrior has done it like also like even more than me, taking core set characters with core set decks and beating some of the hardest villains on the game on Expert. You can totally do it. So if they want to talk about difficulty or cards, it's going to be. I feel like they need to take some of the core set powerhouses out of rotation.
That's fair. I've described it many times on stream and through videos that I don't necessarily think that cards are getting stronger. I think they're just getting more consistently strong because we do have the Maria Hills, the Make the Calls, the Doctor Stranges in those initial early waves of the game. But I guess like, did I make it up, or did they say in that stream that the core set was going to be an evergreen product? Or did I dream that?
I'm pretty sure they said that, but maybe the core set is the new core set. I know some people in the Arkham community. I was checking Reddit, some YouTube comments there, and people were saying like it sounded like the Arkham core set was here to stay, and it's not here to stay. There's going to be a new one. So I kind of feel like anything's possible, but to me it makes too much sense to just do a new core set. And I do think we did actually a podcast topic on the core set. It's still a really good product, but if I had to point out its flaws, I think they're quite obvious and quite easily rectified. So I feel like if I was running the game, I would want a new core set after we'd learned like 5-6 years of design lessons.
Yeah. So you are on team new core set.
I think there will be, and I actually think I've been a little bit not so thrilled about the current legacy thing, but I actually am on team. I think I would like a new core set. I think it just makes too much sense.
Okay, so what would you like to see in a new core set? And would you buy it? Like, I know that you've talked about, rolling off content. Are you still going to be playing the game with the new stuff if they do release a core?
It's going to be kind of a case of whereas before it was almost a no-brainer. Whatever they release, I'm probably going to buy it. And if it was a string of bad releases, then maybe we'd have a topic discussion. But here, I think they're going to have to if they are doing a chapter 2 and kind of a sort of a soft, not really a relaunch of the game, but really like moving forward in a big new way. Like it's a big step. Definitely the way Arkham was talking about it, which is a different game slightly. Like all the new core encounter sets are going to be used a lot more going forward. It's like very different to Marvel Champions. But they're going to kind of have to earn it from me. But I got really excited for the Arkham core set, so it might not be that hard. But I will genuinely like look at it, see. So it's a strong likelihood I'm going to, but it's not a guarantee.
Yeah. Okay. So if we look at what's up,
I was gonna say, did you ask me what I'd like to see in the core set? Because I don't think I actually answered that at all.
Yeah. And like I do want to preamble that answer with what we saw announced in the Arkham core set. So if you are not familiar with the article, they did announce that we're going to be getting a new campaign, very similar to the 3-game campaign of Night of the Zealot, which came in the initial. But we're also getting new investigators as well as revamped investigators, meaning that investigators that are already in the game just tweaked. And we did get a tease from that same live stream that we were discussing earlier that is going to be happening for Champions as well. And so with that in mind, the fact that there may be new heroes as well as revamped heroes in this new core set or the upcoming waves, now I want you to answer the question, what do you want to see it?
Okay, well here's a spicy thing, because in the Arkham one, the kind of existing hero they're showing being revisited is Joe Diamond. Joe Diamond came separately as part of an expansion. He was not in the original core set, so he's a revisited hero, but it wasn't a core hero revisited in the core set. They might still do that, but I'm actually not sure if they are. And I think in Marvel, it would be maybe, I don't know if dangerous is the right word, but if they take Spider-Man out of the core box, that could be a big blow, because like this core set has Spider-Man, this core set doesn't. I know which core set I'm probably maybe gravitating towards.
Right.
So I think that's kind of a factor there. I would like to see. I don't feel a need for revised heroes too much, but I am okay with it, particularly like the bigger names, particularly if they had issues of Hulk, which is debatable whether they did. Hulk. But
I'll edit your coughs out. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, clean them up. I said Hulk.
Beautiful.
No, I don't know if I want Hulk in the core set. Actually, he could be a hero pack still. But I feel like what I'm looking for as a existing player who has everything, a reason to buy it. So I want the characters that come into this core set to offer something new to me as a long-term player. And I don't mind that I'm getting like the dials and tokens again. You can always use new ones. Like small ones maybe go missing, the dials get worn out. Or you just have the fancy ones from buy the same token. But theirs can still be useful. But 5 heroes and 3 villains, assuming we get the same, that just sounds good to me. So as long as all of that is useful to me, I would be fine with it. There's pretty good value for what you get in the core set. So even if some cards are reprints or some tokens aren't necessary, I'm probably still getting a fairly good deal. Like 5 heroes, what's the price of 5 hero packs going to be? It's probably going to be less than a new core, right?
Yeah, it
so
would
it's
be.
not. So it's like fine.
Or I'm sorry, the new core would be less than the 5 heroes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's what I thought you said. Yes. So I mean, I don't mind it too much. It just has to be different enough.
hmm So I guess like taking it to the other extreme, what would the new core set look like to make you not buy it?
Ooh, I mean, I guess the opposite of what I just said. Maybe if like 2 or 3 of the heroes were exact reprints of what we already had, that would be sad.
Yeah.
Other than that, I think it'd be very difficult. If there were no new aspect cards, that would be a big downer for me, particularly because I like to deck build, and that's topic of this video has been about. But I feel like that's unlikely as well because the Arkham core set released. I said there's going to be some of the new aspect class cards, whatever they call them there, but most of them were new, and they looked quite interesting and very much modern design as opposed to Arkham's core set design originally. So I mean, I feel like they'd really have to mess up for me not to want it.
Yeah. No, that's fair. That's fair. I'm intrigued by it because one, I think a core set needs to be relatively straightforward when it comes to mechanics. I saw somebody in chat or in comics somewhere that was saying that like it'd be cool if you had like a diversity of complexity in terms of heroes, similar to like what they did in Spirit Island, where there's a lot of like easy and medium and a couple of hard ones that you can dabble in. I think it would be cool to see a breakdown, like they were saying, of like 2 easy, 2 medium, and maybe 1 like more complex. But I feel like the aspect cards that came in the core set are relatively straightforward, right?
Well, yeah.
Deal 5 damage, draw a card, discount a card. And I think that's kind of what you want in core set cards. And I'll be interested to see them revisit that like design space in terms of simple cards. And I don't say that in any sort of derogatory sense, but simple cards with like the new or the current environment in mind and 5 years of design experience to see, okay, are we going to get another resourceful? Probably not. It's probably,
No.
I don't even think that was a core set card, but anyways,
Tenacity.
cards, yeah, tenacity, right? Where it's just a very expensive ready. Probably not. And so reading is a very simple concept, right?
Yes.
So are we going to get a revisited version of tenacity, knowing the designers knowing what they know after all of their design experience now? How are they going to re-implement that specific idea in a core set card that is still simple? I think that'll be a fun kind of thing to watch out for.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest with you. There are definitely complex cards released these days, but there are still simpler cards released these days and even heroes. Like, if I compare She-Hulk to Winter Soldier, I think I'd argue Winter Soldier is maybe more straightforward than She-Hulk in a lot of ways, particularly in like flow of gameplay and things. And I feel like what Marvel Champions does really well is there can be like beauty and depth in simplicity. Like if 2 simple things come together, you have something more complex. It's just like take med team to heal this good ally, or have this thing react to this thing. It's really kind of, you can make a complex machine out of simple parts. So I feel optimistic they can do well with that. Fingers crossed. I really don't think it'd be difficult. There's maybe like 3 or 4 cards I would swap or power boost in the main core set, tweak a couple of heroes, make Iron Man more solo friendly out of the box. But I feel like there's some really easy wins to improve on, that I hope they take if they do it.
Yeah. Looking at the Spider-Man comment that you had where it's like you want Spider-Man in the box. I don't know, for some reason it makes me really excited and happy to buy a Spider-Man like hero pack. I don't know why. You can just see him swinging on it and I want it. I don't know why. Put him in the core box and in a hero pack. There's a lot of Spider-Man out there. I've seen the movies. There's thousands. Let's get it going. But would you like to see the same 5 heroes that we got in the initial core revamped, or do you want to see new ones?
Well, here's an interesting topic for you. If they go into current environment and things will be rotating in and out, well, new things will be made, then eventually going out. I don't think they'll come back in directly. If you put in 5 Avengers and Avenger stuff rotates out, what are you going to do? Because the core set is set up to be a core for something that's building off it that's now moved on. I really liked you actually had this answer on a previous episode of this podcast, which I really like. It stuck with me this whole time. What if they had one hero from each group? Maybe Spider-Man's there as a web warrior. We've got Wolverine as an X-Men, and they're probably not going to go for all the big names in one box, obviously, but probably 2 or 3 to hook people in, right? And you could have a whole mixture, kind of like reaching in different directions, and someone's probably going to be able to build in a certain way. The other actual topic I've heard is people suggest it could be the Fantastic Four with 4 heroes, one for each aspect. My only reason I think they might not do that is because I still don't think they've got like the big name recognition of like Spider-Man. Oh, I want to buy a Marvel game. Oh, it's got Spider-Man. Oh, maybe Captain America. Some kind of Hulk, She-Hulk, the Hulk, someone. It's still very, I think, more appealing than Fantastic Four, even if they are now. I think the movie has brought them more to public attention. But aside from that, the other movies didn't have the best reputation. They're not Spider-Man. I'll put it that way in terms of selling power. And you want your core set to sell. And once you've got the Fantastic Four, how do you link that into an expansion? Because I don't think I feel like once you do a Fantastic Four box, there's not a lot of other heroes or like maybe trait support you're really gonna need in a big way. So I kind of feel like Fantastic Four makes sense as an expansion as opposed to a core set. But I wanted to touch on that. I don't know if you have opinions on the Fantastic Four being a
I
possibility.
think yes. I agree with you. I don't think it's going to be Fantastic Four. If I had to bet on it, I would say that Fantastic Four is going to be an upcoming release, but it's not going to be the core box. And I think if you look at it from like a historical board game standpoint, I cannot think of any games, and there may be, but I cannot think of any games where Fantastic Four is the core gameplay experience. Now, we see like in Marvel Legendary where we have Fantastic Four as expansions and it can be supported as an expansion, but it would be a huge swing and I think a really big risk for a company to say, this is going to be our jumping off point. We're going to get a lot of people in the game and let's do it with Fantastic Four, where that team doesn't necessarily have a proven track record in the board game space. And I think that'd be a pretty risky for them to do. That being said, I do think we will get them as like a deluxe expansion. But I really like the idea of the having multiple different traits in the box and jumpstarting that. And as you were talking, it made me think that maybe we misunderstood or misinterpreted the rotation part of the discussion of that live stream a couple months ago, where in a TCG, I think of a rotation as being a constantly evolving thing. So every year sets roll off and then the next year more sets roll off. What if by rotation what they meant is kind of paralleled in the language that we see in the Arkham Horror article, where it's not necessarily starting a rotation, it's starting the next chapter. And so it's saying that here's chapter 2. It's almost like a revised edition. And I don't want to necessarily use those words because that typically means new mechanics and new rules. But this is a clean jump. And this is going to start chapter 2. And this chapter 2 is not going to rotate off. Products that are released in this current model don't rotate off in a year or two, which is how I've always kind of assumed that a rotation in this game would work because that's how it does in a TCG. But there's maybe that discussion, what they were saying is that anything pre-chapter 2 rotates off and that's not the current environment, but the current environment going forward is static until we get a chapter.
That would be crazy to me for Marvel. Like I can't imagine Champions having like a chapter 3 of a new core box. But I mean, it could happen. I mean, eventually, I guess maybe. I don't know. I'd be very curious to see how long it goes on because they said 2 to 3 years, and I can't imagine a new core box every 2 to 3 years for a new chapter each time. Does that make sense?
It's been 7.
Yeah.
Right. So like if they do it every 7 years or something like that, just a reset.
But they have said they're going to rotate things like every 2 to 3 years. I think they've said.
Oh, they did say that.
So
they did say that. Got it.
That's what I'm kind of like skeptical about, but I think it's interesting. I'm quite excited by chapter 2. Do you know a crazy thought I had? What if in the new core box for Marvel, if it happens, there's a 5th aspect?
That'd be exciting. Determination, the lost aspect.
Yeah,
That'd be cool.
honestly.
That'd be really cool. I'd be down for that. I was not aware that they did say they did put a time limit on that rotation. So everything I just said, scratch that from your head. But
I
if
think
they do switch that up, that would be um yeah, I'm less on board with the rotation now. Again, I'm back to my initial thoughts on rotation. I would love a new aspect. I think
yeah,
that'd be a lot of fun.
that would be really fun. I'll have to see if I can find the article. I think it might have been in the article where they said about it. They posted it on the website. But I don't know. I don't know. I can't find it immediately, so let us know in
Yeah.
the comments what they've said and who's right, who's wrong, and what you think might happen.
Yeah. So if they did uh go and do multiple different traits, what's your dream team lineup for a new core set? Give me 5 heroes.
Oh, I mean, Dream Team might not be what I'd pick. I think a smart designer would pick. I think they should keep some of the powerhouses back. But you know what I want? I do want Spider-Man. I mean, I've already got these characters, so maybe not. But I feel like if I was starting the game afresh, let's put in Wolverine. Let's put in Captain America. We definitely need to put in some female characters. But all I've got coming into my head is like, oh, what if I could just start with Star Lord? No, he would be bad because I think he would have to be complicated, and he might not be a core set friendly one. Okay, I'd have to think it through a little bit more. But I think you start with a big Avenger and a big X-Men if you could. They probably don't have the licensing, but that's what I would want. I don't know. I definitely still think Spider-Man. I think you try and sell a core set without Spider-Man, it'll sell worse than a core set with Spider-Man. And you want to sell your core set because you can't sell anything else until the core set is sold.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only
Mm-hmm.
one I've got like locked in. I, I do think like maybe a Guardian. Maybe we put like maybe Groot in there. I think that'd
Mm.
be cool. What if we had one of the Fantastic Four in there? We could have like the Thing with a protection precon. We could have
That would be
Spider-Man
cool.
with maybe this time a leadership precon, and then somebody else, maybe Jessica Jones with a Justice precon. That'd be cool. Yeah, I've thrown out a few names that I don't have an exact lineup. What about you?
So I did a whole live stream where we talked about this, so I'm coming into it with that already
Ooh,
tinting my thoughts, but I do want to just spend a little bit of time on the thought of adding a Fantastic Four into this box because I never conceptualized the adding of a new team in this box. I thought it was going to be all revamped of old teams or a brand new team, Fantastic Four, which I think is a little bit less likely, but just teasing one is kind of cool. I like that a lot actually. So I think my my thoughts would be Captain America. I think Captain America Steve Rogers in their revamped. I think a Jane Foster Thor
ooh,
would be an interesting one. Mantis for Guardians. I think it would be cool to see Mantis in there. And I want her to be the like best healer that we've ever a viable healer Marvel Champions. That's what I want. So Mantis. What else did we have? I wasn't 100% sure if they had the rights to continue to print X-Men. But if they do, I would like to see Beast in there. I think that would be a fun new character. And then what was there's one more revamped hero from a team. We had Avenger. No, yeah, James Foster was Avenger. Spider-Man was Web Warrior. Mantis Guardian. X-Men. What's a big team I'm missing?
X-Force champions, Web Warriors. I can't remember what we got to.
Yeah,
Defenders.
that would be cool. Yeah, I would like to see a defender, maybe like a Jessica Jones or something like
Yeah,
that to tease up that. No, I'm gonna go back to Fantastic Four. I want the Thing in there. Put the Thing in there. Let's go. Let's rock and roll with the Thing. I think it'd be so much fun. Mm.
yeah. I actually really like the idea of a Mantis hero. I don't know if I want a big healer in the core set because that feels kind of like more of a niche role, but maybe. I definitely like the idea of it. I think those all sound like good characters, to be honest. They all sound, I did this video. It's so funny. I can barely remember the names from it, but I did a video of like the 30 or something heroes I want to see most in the game. There's
Mm.
so many cool heroes that aren't in the game yet. So they have a lot of possibilities. I wonder if Doctor Strange, because they've teased Doctor Strange might be revisited. Him being in the core box could be kind of fun.
Mhm.
But it
Mhm.
depends how many Avengers, if they're going like all Avengers or majority Avengers, or there could be some competition. Because I feel like you said Captain America. I feel like that makes a lot of sense to put in the box. I feel like his name recognition's, I feel like his appeal, at least maybe in the board game kind of space, is kind of up there with maybe not Spider-Man, but is like close to. It's like, he's in a conversation. Him, Iron Man, Hulk. Kind of like the classics. I guess. I hope they have the rights to the X-Men. I hope they change it because I know things were probably a bit weird before, but we've got a video game, Cosmic Invasion, coming up. Guess what? It's got X-Men, it's got Avengers, it's got Guardians, it's got weird characters. We've got Marvel Rivals again. They've got all different weird characters all together, X-Men and otherwise. And Marvel is now making movies for the MCU with the same characters. It just feels like it would make a lot of sense for things to be easier to license now. And I have no idea. There's probably some licensing person listening thinking, what is this idiot on about? It's now harder than ever. It's completely different. But I hope it's easier, and I hope they can do that, because what if Beast came in the new core set?
I think I would buy the new core set.
Iron Man and Captain Marvel really about energy resources in the original core. What if we have a Beast about mental resources in the new one?
Yeah,
I think it could
or
work.
Mr.
And he could,
Fantastic.
yeah,
With the mental.
yeah.
Isn't he like super smart?
He has a very big brain in his stretchy body. Beast could potentially have Avenger and X-Men traits. You could make it
That'd
work.
be cool. Dude, that'd be wild.
In a bunch of the stories I've read, like literally on this shelf behind me, Beast is in the Avengers. He's a lot more prominent in the Avengers than I thought. I think I've seen him in the Avengers more than like Wolverine. So he's totally, at least in certain eras, has been part of the Avengers. It's not a crazy thing to throw out there.
That's really cool. If you had to guess, do you think we would or would not get a new aspect?
I don't think we'll get a new aspect. Or I think we could get one in the future in a Deadpool style pack, but it'd be very occasional, but not in a core box. I don't think they'll change it up. I think card space in a new product is very tight. You always want to put more cards in as a designer, I think, than you probably can actually fit in and have printed. That's what I imagine it would be like here. So I feel like they're not going to have maybe space in the box to dedicate to that, unless it's like 4 heroes in the box instead of 5. But then why would you have a 5th aspect but only 4 heroes? So I don't think we'll see it here. But hey, anything's possible. I love the idea.
Yeah, I think it'd be really cool. This would be the time to do it if you had a ongoing or an aspect that was going to be supported going forward. This would be the time to add it. But I think I'm kind of with you. I think we're going to probably stick with the original 4. What about villains? Are there any villains that you would be super interested in seeing in this new core set box?
You know what's actually upset me about the idea of a new core set box, and I hope it's not the next product. I hope we get like a scenario pack or something before it. On the original Marvel Champions core set box, there is one of the many characters on it. There is Dormammu. We've never got him in Marvel Champions, and I feel like he was promised. So I want to see. Maybe I don't know if he'd be in the new core set, but I can actually totally see that. But I hope we get him in the game. Beyond that, I don't know if I've got any expectations. I feel like they could maybe go for someone more prominent than like Rhino Claw Ultron. I feel like they could put a really big name villain in the core to get people into the core set, because that's what you want to do. You want to get your PlayStation in someone's front room so you can sell them the games.
Exactly.
And as a player, I want a big name villain. That sounds really fun. So I think it's a win-win. So I hope they go bolder than Ultron, who is known, he's in the MCU, etc. But I hope they go bolder somehow.
My favorite answer that I've seen is Dr. Octopus.
Oh, perfect.
Right?
No notes.
Right? Yeah. I was like, that's it. If the new core set does not have Dr. Octopus, I will still buy it, but I will be upset. No, I'm just kidding. I won't. But I feel like he's a really good big name villain to bring people in.
He is really, really interesting. And, you could have, there's a lot of spider villains you could do. You could have Scorpion instead of Rhino, and you could end it with Doc Ock. But you maybe don't want to go too much spider thing in the first box. I don't know. But I think Doc Ock would be so good.
Yeah, I also saw Abomination as kind of a Rhino replacement, another big brute type situation.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. That checks out.
I think that would be good. Doc Ock. I feel like, to me, with no reasoning behind it whatsoever, but I feel like Abomination start Doc Ock villain 2, and I don't know who would be that villain 3.
I was thinking Doc Ock villain 3. That's really interesting.
But Doc Ock villain 3, I could see it.
He could do both. I think he could do both.
Yeah. I think whenever I think of Doc Ock, I don't necessarily think global scale, which is kind of where I was going with
Right.
Like, I think of Ultron as being more of a global threat, being that final villain, which is why I kind of think I put or slotted Doc Ock into that slot too. But I could definitely see him as the three. We could actually get a redo of a villain too, right? Like, there's no reason that they wouldn't just redo Loki for a third time. Or
Loki would be up there with what with you could put a card from the top of your deck down as not a drone but a Loki clone, as a clone instead of a drone.
there you go.
I'm
There you
already
go.
we just reskin Ultron. No, please don't do that. Yeah, I don't know who they could reskin. I'm trying to think of who's like the big villains at the end of the boxes we have that would fit.
What
Part of
about
me is like
Thanos?
Thanos would be crazy as about to save Thanos, but I think they should save him. I could see them doing another expansion with him where he gets to be the final fifth villain.
Yeah.
I think that would be awesome. So yeah. I don't know. I've not speculated on this at all. I wish they had like X-Men licensing, do an X-Men core set, but they're not going to do that. But I would love to see like Dark Phoenix or something like Hellfire Club lead up to it.
That would be cool. That'd be cool. There's so many cool ideas out there, and just like the lore of Marvel goes so deep that like we, I feel like they could print this game until the inevitable heat death of the universe. Um, but yeah, any final thoughts on the core set before we log off today? And I do want to just say, if you do have thoughts, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on your podcast platform, drop those comments, because I have had so much fun reading your speculation in terms of what you think or hope to be in that box. It's been a lot of fun to do that. So continue to do that. Drop those comments down. But Villain, any last words before we hit the stop button?
Yeah, I would say, as someone who's been like again skeptical of the current environment a bit, I don't think people should necessarily be skeptical of a new core set. I know I covered the Arkham release reveal preview of the new core set, and there's a few more people more kind of like negative or on the fence than I expected. I thought the Arkham community was by and large pretty positive on the current legacy environment. Um, and I'm expecting some people in Marvel Champions, if it is announced, to be pretty negative on it. But if you're getting 5 kind of like new heroes, new designs, and we talked about the price of hero packs, even me, who's a little bit skeptical, I think I'm going to get a great deal on the amount of content on that box. So I feel like it's probably just good. So I'm actually pretty positive. Hope we see it. Don't know if I've got more than that to add. Yeah, maybe make sure the starting villain doesn't have a really tiny threat threshold. I think that'd be great.
Yeah, that would be good. That would be good. Again, pure speculation, but I'm guessing that we're going to get a lot more information on November 22nd, which is when Fantasy Flight Games is doing their in-flight report at PAX Unlimited. I also believe that they will be live streaming that, maybe. I don't know. If not, I will be at that event, and I plan on doing a video recapping everything. We know we're going to be getting more information on Arkham Horror. They put that in the article. And so if I was to do it, I would also have information there about Marvel Champions, which is the reason that I think that we might get some more information either there or potentially beforehand. And so I am eagerly refreshing my Fantasy Flight homepage every Thursday. My wild speculation. We're recording this on a Wednesday, which is wild.
Crazy.
I did check. They did not update their post schedule. They did not post anything on Wednesday.
I just went to look.
Yeah, right.
Look.
My guess is that we will see a article with the 4th and final hero of the Civil War wave announced potentially tomorrow of the recording.
Ooh.
Then a teaser article either on the 13th or the 20th of a new Arkham or new Marvel core, and then the in-flight report on the 22nd, which would dive a little bit more into that. I could also see them just not do an article because they released the article for Arkham on Halloween, which was just absolutely thematic, and so I could see them announcing the core set being that big announcement at the in-flight on the 22nd. So we got some pretty exciting weeks hopefully coming up.
Yeah, sounds good. I'm excited to see what happens. Even a little bit skeptical on some stuff. Actually, really looking forward to it. Really looking forward to the next hero. Wonder Man looked amazing. So a lot of good stuff.
Simply Wonderful is the article title. Love it. So, yeah, thank you so very much for listening to this episode of Shadow of the Cast. We like to answer questions on these, and you can submit your questions either through a YouTube post, which will be on the Nelson All Over Cards post for the next episode. I usually post that a couple of days in advance. Or if you want to, you can email us at shadowofthecast@gmail.com, and we will answer questions that we get on the next episode. But Villain, it's always a pleasure taking time and talking. Yeah, that's all I got. So I guess until next time, we'll see you around.
See you guys.
Peace.
Bye.